Hi, good evening everyone, and welcome to the first session of School of AR. I would like to congratulate all of you for becoming a part of the cohort. Before we start the session, I would like to share the complete structure of the program with you and some ground rules as well. So, the duration of the program is for 2 months, and we'll be having sessions on weekends and on some Fridays. Naveen Upadhyay will be your mentor who will be teaching you advanced capabilities of Spark AR in these sessions. During these 2 months, you will be required to submit 3 AR effects based on the learning from these sessions. Naveen will share the assignments with you when you are required to submit the AR effect. So, there are basically 4 eligibility criteria for completing this cohort. First, completing MIL blueprint course, which the link I have shared in the email with all of you. So, if any one of you have not completed the course and have not submitted your AR effect till now, please submit it by tonight or maximum by tomorrow evening. The second criteria is attendance. You need to attend all the sessions as 90% attendance is mandatory for the program. Then the 3 AR effects. As I said earlier, you will be required to submit 3 AR effects during the entire cohort based on the learnings from these sessions. And the last criteria is Facebook group. I have shared the URL of Facebook group with all of you. You need to join the Facebook group as it will be primary source of communication from now on. Also, all the mentors are available in the group to resolve your queries real time. Anyone who is not a part of the Facebook group will not be considered a part of the cohort. I'll be sharing the URL in the chat as well. Those who have not joined the group yet, please do it now. All the participants who have successfully completed this cohort and complete all the four conditions will get an exam voucher worth $200 for Spark AR MIL course. You can complete this course with the voucher and get certified from Facebook absolutely free of cost. So that's not it. Simultaneously, we will also be launching a special hackathon only for the participants who are a part of the cohort. There will be challenges from brands like M Caffeine, Vega, Sugar Cosmetics, etc. And you will be required to create AR effects for the marketing of these brands. There are grand prizes for the winners of the hackathon, including MacBook Air, iPhone, and other gadgets. Final point. At the end of the session, I will share a Google form to mark your attendance. So don't leave the session before marking your attendance. That's all from my side. Thank you, and I hope all of you are excited to learn advanced features of Spark AR. So without any further delay, I would like to request Naveen to start the session. Over to you, Naveen. Naveen, you are on mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Askar, for the introduction. And welcome, guys, for this part school. And I'm super excited to share my knowledge on the subject. And today, our first session in this part school, which starts with the intermediate effect. And from there, we will have hand tracking, post processing, target tracking, multiple APIs, and there are almost 15 sessions that we have planned with you. So without further delay, I'll start with the first one. Could you let me know in the chat box if you have access to it? Where are you joining from, and how long have you been working on Spark AR, and what are your expectations? Anything? I would love to know. What are we? Yeah. What are yours? What is your background as well? I hope you're able to see my screen. Achal, can you confirm me? Yeah, I hope everybody's. Yeah, okay. All right, we start with our advanced features, which one of them is floating particles. And these floating particles are part of the world effect where we emit those particles into the entire space, not just in the camera space. While I talk about this camera space and the world space, and the mobile space, the screen space. Don't get confused, don't get overwhelmed. I will walk you through with everything. Oh, hi Sahil, hi Ajit. Welcome back. Welcome to the session, and I'm super glad to have you guys here. Um, Starting with the particles is it's a what are particles? The particles are basically there's a funnel of objects which are similar in material properties, and then when you activate them, you can have many particles acting like a funnel of objects. Why do we need particles? Is that in the scene sometimes if there's a rain coming, so we know there's a raindrop, and the raindrop has similar particles, they look alike. There's a little bit of change maybe in their shape, in their texture. So if there's a rain coming, it's impossible for us to have so many objects to create in the scene. So what we do is instead we create a particle system, and we tell those particles to act in a way like it's raining, fall from the sky and come to the ground. So that is why the particle system is needed. And when we talk about the world spaces, that putting them into around us into the scene, and we'll go through them one by one. This is the agenda of the session. Um, for the first one, we've already covered. I would like to kind of emphasize on the point number two, which is how do we proceed learning when we're attending the session? Do we just do you just listen to me, or do you want to do it on the go? So I would prefer it if you want to do it on the go, and which means that I teach you a concept and you try to apply it in Spark AR right then and then. So because we can always take after every 10 minutes, we can take like a 3 or 4 minutes pause so that you can apply whatever you learned, and then we can move further. I think that way it will be better to learn for you. I hope you have already installed Spark AI Studio and you're joining from a computer. And let me share let me share a link where you can download these assets, which are we going to use in the session. And I hope you've got the link. You can click on this link and you can download a sample project. A sample project have a couple of textures. I can show you what textures we have here. It's called Unfinished Project, and we have it might be too small for you. Okay. I hope you're able to see the screen now. It's much bigger than earlier. All right. So in this unfinished project, what we have is we've imported some textures that we're going to use, and so we don't have to worry about the textures when we are working on this project. And there's some audio file which are just audio files. Like when we tap on the screen, these audio files should play. Um, Meanwhile, I'm talking. You can go ahead and click on the link and download this project. It is just one click project, and you will open a screen like this, so that we can be on the same page during the session. So that's how we're going to proceed. I'm going to teach you something, and then those learnings you can apply in the patch editor on the go. And then if you have questions or doubts, we can take them. All right. Okay. Um, then we'll talk about the immersive floating particles overview. I hope I'm giving you this time to download every or the project that the project file from the link. All right. The immersive floating particles are, we just talked about, like they're immersive because they're in the world space. We can kind of walk through them. That's why it's called immersive effect. When you're actually immersed into a world effect, um, then you can walk away and walk towards them is immersiveness, all right? How do we set up those particles? We're going to learn about this. Understanding the coordinate spaces, the spaces that I'm talking about, the world space, the screen space, the local space, we'll talk about those. We'll majorly, the importance for this project is just to understand local versus world. But for the sake of learning the AR concepts, I'll walk you through from all of them. Um, all right. Then we'll talk about the segmentation. In a lot of filters, you've seen that if there's a person walking, they have a background and which is altogether very different from the real background. So the segmentation enables it. The person's body is segmented and then they put on in front of a background. That's how the segmentation work. So we'll cover that as well. And we will add some audio to the scene, which is one of them will be a background music, which will run throughout the filter, and another music which will only run when we screen tap. So this will be good you to kind of understand how the audio works in Spark Air. Then we'll take up your questions, and then I'll also give you a little bit brief of about next session, which is going to be tomorrow. All right. I really hope that you've already downloaded the session. Can you confirm in the chat that you've already opened the unfinished project that I just shared on the link? Okay. Okay. The first step is to create. This is the blank project. There's not much difference between a blank project and the asset imported into it. These assets are just like you can just add import assets and those assets will be there. Let me show you what are we going to build in the end of the session. So you have an idea that what are we going to build. And okay, this is what we're going to make. That if you see here, there are particles in front of me, there are particles in the back of me, and I'm kind of saturated from my background. Uh, I have a different lighting on my body. My background has a different lighting. So this is segmentation that's enabling it, and these particles which are flowing are the particle systems. There's a technique of some particles are in front of me and some of are in the back. So we will learn how to make that happen. And yep, let's jump in. This is our expectation that we want to make, and we have a blank project right now. So you can pay attention um, to make the effect like that. All right. The first step is to create a particle system to I'm assuming that you have a basic knowledge of the tool. So this is the this is a scene panel where we create the scene objects. One of the scene object is particle system right now. Particle system is one of the scene objects which is in the scene, right? So this is an object, and we can apply materials to this object and change textures and those things. So first step is to import that particle system. And there are a couple of other objects like a plane, like a rectangle, like in a 2D space. Plane works for like a 3D space, which we can import. For now, we're going to go with the particle system. As soon as I import a particle system, by default, its name is emitter 0. And I see in my screen that these particles are, there are some particles which are, spawning, and they're living for a while and they're dying. This is almost like they have a very short lifespan right now. That's okay. We can totally control this lifespan for how long they're here and how they look. But this is the basic setup that you get. And if you notice, there's a checkered texture on them, and there's a checkered texture on them. Is it because we have not defined any properties? We have not assigned any properties to this. When I say properties, I talk about like how this particle should look. Every particle, they're all similar. They all look similar. Their position is different. They might have a different rotation, but they're going to look similar, very similar. The first thing that I do when I import something into my scene is rename it, because it's very convenient when you're working on a large projects. So I'm gonna say that okay, this emitter I'm gonna use for my background. I want to show it in my background. So I'm gonna say okay, let's make it for the background. And when I see that there are some layers in this basic project that we have made, we can kind of delete them for now, and then we'll create them on the go. All right, so there's a layer in the scene, and then it's called foreground layer. Foreground is in front of me, but I'm gonna rename this layer to, let's say, background layer. Assign this to background layer. So this emitter is going to be in my background layer. It doesn't really matter if I have to assign the background these layers, or can I just work with the scene. But with time, we'll also understand that, like, why is it required to have a layer? Is it really necessary or not? It is actually not necessary to work with the layers. You can totally work in the scene hierarchy, but there are a couple of things that you have to understand. If I have, let's say, for an example, I'm going to disable this. I'm just going to make you understand the layering and the structure. If I add a plane object, the plane is a square, a checkered box. You can resize it the way you want, and you can you can position it, or you can rotate it the way you want, whatever you want to do with it. For now, I'm gonna just not scale it and nothing. All right. This is a properties panel where you can change those properties. I'm gonna assign a material for a quick explanation to understand you the layering, and I'm going to assign a different color to it. This is a green color, and this is plain background. All right. And I'm going to duplicate this plane, and I'm going to name this as plain foreground. All right. Right now they have the same size and the same material. I'm going to assign it to the new material. I'm going to call it um, maybe this color, and this size I'm going to make it just the half of the previous one. All right. So the background, the foreground right now. So whenever there are some things in the scene panel, all right, very important topic, very important point. Whenever they are in the scene panel, the render order, the way they are appearing on the screen, starts from the bottom. So my foreground will be appearing first, okay? Then my background will be appearing first, and then my emitter will be appearing up behind this. So if you see that, I can only see when they're above it. What if I change this foreground order to, like, hey, go in the back? So if they go in the back, I can't see them because it is covered by this, all right? And when it in the front, and I can see it when it's in the front. Okay. Now, for the layering, it is exactly opposite. Okay. For the layering, it works from the top to the bottom. So if there's a layer on the first, then it is appearing in the scene the first, and then if there's a layer in the second number, then it's going to be behind this layer. So we can quickly assign this foreground is to be like a new layer, and this plain background is my background layer already, and I'm going to say that this layer is called my foreground. Now, in according to my layer, my foreground should be in the first render first, and then my background should render after that. Now, I have given this order two places, in my scene and my layer. Both means the same thing, but which one has priority? What if I change my foreground to behind my background? Would it affect? It's not. It would not affect, because the layers will always have priority over the scene. So it's totally okay to have everything on layer, but to understand the, the hierarchy order, it will always be from bottom to top, while in the layers it will be from top to bottom if you're using them. So for an example, if I change this layer, it's not going to affect my scene because of this. But if I change it here, it's definitely going to affect. All right. So I hope this is clear. We are not going to use these layers for now. So I'm going to just delete it. Okay. These were for just an example and not part of our project. And we'll come back to the emitters. When I click on the emitter, when I clicked on my plane, I could change their position, scale, and rotation. Similarly, we could do this for the emitter as well. The first thing that we gotta do is, if you see in the reference, there were particles around me, and then I want to start those particles from the ground, and they should go to the sky. Right now, my particle is starting from the middle of the screen, like it is 0 comma 0. It is just there. So whenever you have something in the scene, and it is a 3D, it has three axes, it will always going to be centered in the center of the screen. If it is a 2D thing, it's going to be the 0 comma 0 for the 2D space is from this point, which is the leftmost corner on the top. But for other 3D elements, which is three axes, they will always start from the center. Okay, I know in the chat that you've imported, you've already imported a emitter in the scene. Um, Please let me know in the chats. Yeah. I think the chats, they take some time to delay, so I'm hoping that you're replying there. All right. This the next thing we're gonna do is, we're gonna move this to a little down, because the the bottom of my ground is where I want to start this emitter. It's spawning right there. So if I move it down, you can move it down from here, or you can move it down from, from here, from managing this, maybe 2 or 1 or 0.1, or like, you can do that. What I want is that this is my camera, and whatever distance that we write in here, it is measured in meters. Okay. So how down should I go so that it is almost on the ground? An average height of a man is about 1.5 meters. So we can say that we can go from the center about minus 1.7. And if we go minus 1.7, you will notice that it has gone down in the scene. And our camera can only see in this direction. But if you see that my emitter has gone a little bit down in the scene, it's all right. We can still modify it from there. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is, so emitter has a lot of properties, so don't be afraid from them. Every property is very simple and easy to experiment with. And as much as you want to experiment with them, you will learn that they're the kind of beautiful to create great effects. All right. I don't want to change the scale of the particles. I don't want to change the rotation for now, but that can be done. You can change the scale of those particles once they have a material. It will reflect. Now I'm good with the scale right now, 1:1. Um, these options are like enabled for as this, like, do you want this to appear in front camera and back camera both? Um, this user and participant is for video calling, and the capture is something when you make a recording on Instagram. If you enable this, then it will be shown in the recording. If you disable this, then user can see it while they're working on the filter, but in the final video it won't appear. So it is helpful for showing in instructions where you don't want to change your experience because of too much text, but you still want to instruct your user. So then we change them. Usually we don't use them, but it is kind of useful when you're making something very specific. Tags, we'll cover them in the future sessions. Like there's a whole new session on tags. Type. There are 4 kind of types. So right now, if you see that They're coming out of a point. They're emitting from point. From a point, they're immersing out. All right. I can make it to come from a line, so they will emit in a line, and let me make it a little big for you. They're kind of in a line right now, and then you can change the length of the line for if you want to like a bigger line, how much you want to emit them. Then you can change it to a plane, and the plane would be just like the plane we saw, like a square format. And then you can always size the plane. If you size give it like an equal size, like 1 1, then it's gonna be a square. But if you give it like a different width from the height, then it's going to make a rectangle. So it doesn't matter, it's just like a plane anyway. For this effect, we're going to use a ring because we want those particles to be around us. And the best way aroundness can be measured is in a circle or in a ring. So I'm going to make a ring here. This ring is very small, has like a 0.1 meter of radius, but we're looking for a bigger radius. We can change these numbers from here, but there is some sort of uh, error right now, but we can just import it into the patch. Sometimes it doesn't work, like when you try to change them from here, it doesn't reflect and always stays at 0.1. So what you can do is you can import them into this is a consumer patch. If you click on the radius, the consumer patch comes into the patch editor panel. This is the patch editor panel, and then I'm going to make this radius larger and larger. So let's say I'm going to go to up to 2. If I go up to 2, that means they're kind of emitting in a 2 meter of radius right now. So those particles are emitting in a circular radius on the circumference, in the 2 meter of circumference, that emitting for a particular time interval, the same time interval, because we didn't change it yet. Then I'm gonna change it to like a number or bigger number, like 5 maybe. If I do that 5, if you see that this is my camera, and then there's a circle around me where the particles are being emitted. I'm gonna make it 7, even bigger than that. We want a lot of particles playing with us, and so right now they're just on the ground. If you see, they're just emitting and just not emitting elsewhere. So this is a ring, and I'm gonna increase the height of the ring so that they can also emit upwards. So I'm gonna make it to 2, maybe up to 2 meters, because after that we don't really need it, so that it kind of can reach us, or maybe can increase to 5 also, if that's. Yep. So now if you see that they're not just emitting at the ground, they're also towards into the y direction. The next is the space, the world space or local space. There are two kind of spaces given to the particles. Okay, let's talk about spaces. There are there are a couple of things that you need to understand about when you talk about computer graphics. How do we see everything on a 2D space? Because our camera looks at things and project it onto our screen. Then this all the 3D depth and everything. How do they calculate it, and how do we see that 3D-ness, the 3D element onto the 2D space, 2D screen? So there's a whole lot of calculation goes behind it. There's like a sum of matrices which converts that data into another matrix, and then to another matrix, and then to another matrix, and that comes to the screen. So there's a lot of calculation which goes behind it, and one of them is this local and world, and there is a camera space and the screen space. That happens. We don't really have time to cover everything for that. Okay. The local and the world is important for us. So I'm gonna import another particle just to explain this particle just for experiment. I'm gonna delete it later. So if you see that if I move this particle up and down, so it I can see that it's affecting all the particles emitting. So I'm gonna increase the lifespan to 5 seconds, okay, so that it stays longer. So if you see, if I go down, if I go up, it's affecting all the particles position, right? Like where it's emitting and then where it's going after that. So I'm going to now change it to local space. And if I do that, you notice that everything becomes uh, centered to that space. So if I move something, if I move it by zero point 0.1, every particle will move by zero point 0.1. Where in the world space, it was not the case. In the world space, it was originating from the very origin point, and if we shift the origin, those particles not going to follow. They're going to follow the old origin, and if you shift to the new origin, only new particles will follow the new origin. But here, all of the particles, the origin for all of the particles have been shifted. So it is useful for something like if you're creating lasers from your eyes, then you want them to be in a local space. But if you're creating like a maybe like a flower garland which is over your ears, then if you're moving, then you want to move them like a like a rope, then there is a world space which is more useful for that. So based on your capability that you need, based on your use case, you can choose to make it local or world. All right, I'm going to delete this test emitter. I hope that we are able to create this ring already in this Spark Air. Feel free to give me some chats that we're with you. All right. Um, I'm going to increase this birth rates to maybe 35 so that there are more number of particles. If you do it 100, then there will be like more particles. If you do like 500, there will be like so many particles in the scene. You can see, right? There's so many particles in the scene. The only reason they are not in the simulator right now is because they're big. They're quite big, and we are just building our effect, and then later on we'll take care of that as well. I have put 500 in birth rate. That means that in every second there are five particles emitting. And five particles are a lot of particles. There's a lot of calculation going on. So we need to kind of be careful about it, that we don't need so much of calculation that our phone crashes, that some of the phone don't support it. So we like to keep it in a way that the scene and the particles, they don't exceed at a time, they don't exceed a certain amount. There's no such limit, but maybe try to keep it 50. It actually depends on how long your particle is actually staying alive in the scene. Right now it's for zero point 0.4 seconds, so which is okay for the calculations. I'm going to keep it to 35, and I put it to 35. The particles, and the next thing I want to change is the lifespan. I think we want them to come to our height and then maybe go above us. If I put 10 seconds, it's going to be there for a while. It's not even going to reach. I don't think so to me. Uh, they're reaching, but they're going to, even 10 seconds sounds good. I'm going to like make it maybe 30 seconds so that they stay longer in the scene. And if you take a overview of this, everything is in a 2D space, and they are emitting in a they're emitting in a ring manner. All right. I also see that right now all the particles, they're going straight. There's no change into it. So when we were using a point, so you notice that the point, all the particles will spring out from that point. So if they're spraying out from that point, so can we change that spray angle? What if I want this particle to go into this direction, this particle in this direction, and that direction? So we can change that. There are three axes given to us: x-axis, y, and z. And what we can do, we'll just change this z-axis by a good amount, by like maybe 30. If you put it to 30, And if we put it to 20, that means whatever amount that you're putting here is 20% is the deviation ahead or before to them. So basically, if it is 30, then 20% of it is 6. So this range can go from 36, 24 to 36. So so this angle, some particles will have maybe 24, some particles, so it's just kind of distributed so that everything is not so much uniform. This is just to create randomness. We've discussed about birth rate, and we also have a like a deviation, like a variation factor to it. And then if I put it like a 10% also here, then this is going to take 35 plus 10%, 35 minus 10%, and it's going to cover that range and distribute it among the particles. Um, we don't want to change anything in the x and the y for this triangle. And I noticed that these are going towards outside. Uh, Now, some of them, not all of them. From this side, they're coming inside. From that side, they're going outside. All right. Okay. When I start the filter, if I refresh the filter, I see that these particles are they're they're emitting, and they're gonna take some time to come to me, and then some time. But we don't want that. We don't want our users to wait for that long, right? So what we can do is that we can have a warm up, like, hey, when I load the filter, warm yourself up, and then give me, you start like you've been there for like 30 seconds. Okay, so we can enable that warm up, and we can say like, hey, imagine that you were warm up by like 30 seconds. And then if I now refresh my filter, you will notice that the particles are already there. These particles are already lying. I don't have to wait for them to appear. um, this is the main the main all the concepts are very similar, like all the properties that you have. Next is that you can change the scale, then the lifespan. We can spin the particles, like maybe spin as in spin on their own axis. So um, if this pen is flying, then it should be flying like this. It should be kind of rotating on its own axis. So that spin you can give here, and you can also put like maybe 40% of variation. um, we can tilt it in a way. Maybe don't want that much of tiltness. It's okay. The variation of 30 as well is okay. You can change this number according to your particles, but just for the sake of this filter, we'll just keep it to 30. We don't want to change this shape right now, but there are a couple of options how the shape of the particle should be. Right now, we're okay with the plane. And then we can create a material, and we assign a color like we did to our planes, like we made them green and we made them red. And we can make these particles to have a texture as well, like, hey, not just give me a grayed out texture, give me some, like a flower, or like a fire, some other texture. And I'm gonna scale it up to zero point 0.1. As I scale it up, you will notice that the scale of those particles have increased. When they were like a little small particles, now they're like a bigger particles. And the next thing I want to change is to give them an acceleration. So if I give a acceleration to them, there's like a certain gravity into the scene, so they can kind of fall, or they can go up, they can go x direction, they can go y direction, they can go any direction that my acceleration is. So I'm gonna give them a 0.05 in the positive direction so that they go upwards. And before I give them an acceleration, I want to check something. I want to check that why not just keep them at just single place. So what is it that giving them speed? Why are they flying up? They're flying up because of the speed is 0.02. If you put it 0, the particle will only spawn at the same position, and they won't go anywhere. If you see that there's a circle right now that I've made, like if I have to make a circle, just have a lot of planes together and then put it in a ring. And if you see that this is kind of like a looks like a like a Jupiter ring, and there's a lot of um, asteroids all together, making the string, is because we don't have any speed here. And it's not necessary to give them speed, but since we will be making them fly from here to the sky, let's give them an acceleration to the y direction. That would be like a little bit acceleration, not too much. Not let them not make shoot like a rocket, but maybe just like a flying a little bit. Acceleration seems a bit higher, like a bit faster to you. Then you can also work with the speed to kind of make a balance. I'll make it like a point 0.5 speed, so there's a little bit of slower emission than it would be um, without a zero speed. With the zero speed, the speed didn't show up, so we'll bring up it here. We'll bring it up and we'll say like 0.05, and then that will be better. Okay. Now you see that I have a I have a ring which is going into the sky from the ground, and that's pretty much that's pretty much it. This is what I actually wanted to have into my effect. Um, then I think we've changed, we've done all the settings, enough settings for a filter, and we just want them to appear in the background, so that is okay. Now this is a world effect. So in a world effect, uh, everything has to be in the world space. So in our hierarchy, if I have something in the device, that means the device is accessible to it. If my device moves, this is gonna move, the thing's gonna move. And in the device I have camera. If my camera moves, everything gonna move. So if my emitter is a child of the camera, so it's gonna move with my camera. So I'm gonna drag it out all the way down. If you notice now, I am not in the device, I'm outside device. you know I'm not into the device. So that means that if I move my device now into the scene, it won't affect the position of these guys, of these particles. So you can like take a walk in the room, and then they will stay at the same place that they were earlier. Okay, it's time to give them a texture. Okay, so out of these properties that we accessed, I hope they're clear, and let me know in the chats that if you're there already, or you need some time to be there with the progress. I hope you're kind of following together. Let's create a material and call this material as particle. Now we'll start with a name like math particle background. It's always helpful to rename your particles, and so that you can always access them easily. And I'm going to assign this particle to my it is already assigned. Okay. um, yep, it doesn't have a texture right now, that's why it's white. If you keep it to standard, then it's going to show the black light, because we don't have a light in the scene, which can, because standard material is affected by the light a lot. So if you don't have a light into the scene, it's gonna look black. you know it's almost like you're walking in the dark and you don't have a torch. Everything you're gonna see is black, because whatever you see from your eyes is very much affected by the light. So what if I have something flat? That means that in the world that we have created in this augmented reality, is not affected by the lights, any light source. Even if you have light, a bright light, the color and everything would be the same as you set it. It won't be affected by it. So we keep it flat. Assign one of the textures. Maybe let's make it flowers. And now everything that we have here, it will become flower if I do number 2. Yep. If you see that there are so many flowers in the scene right now. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is that these flowers are appearing in front of me. They're not in the back of me. They're not in the background. So what should we do? We should make this go away, because there's a meter. They're supposed to be in the background, not in the front. So for that, there are a couple of things that we need to do first. The first thing that we do is that we create a canvas. The canvas is responsible to render out or hold 2D objects, which can be a rectangle or 2D text. And I'm gonna create a rectangle, which is gonna be my user. And I'm gonna, this is a, when I create a rectangle, it is appearing on the 0 comma 0, and its width is 100 by 100. I'm gonna make it like related to the screens, like however my phone's screen is, cover that, and also cover in the y direction. So cover it entirely. I'm going to create a material which is user mat. It's already created, similar to the mat particles. It's just flat and it has nothing right now. Um, Now this user mat, we're done with creating this rectangle. Now we go to the material, and we're going to assign the user mat. That means we want to show the user here. So you go to the camera, and there are a couple of textures that the camera gives. That is the camera texture, like whatever the camera is looking at is camera texture. The segmentation, there are three kinds of segmentation. There's a person segmentation, there's a hair segmentation, there's skin segmentation. But we're going to go here with this personal segmentation. This person segmentation will only show the person to us. So this is where like we've got them out, and if you notice in this the asset panel, there's a camera texture given to us, there's a segment texture given to us, and we will use them one by one. We go back to our user mat, and the texture that we want to put is the camera texture. And so if you see that I'm again visible right now, I'm visible because of this rectangle, because this rectangle is showing me that. But I don't want to see my back of the so bright, that, because the particles should be more visible. The focus of our filter should be the particles, not my background and the user. So what we'll do is that we will take this user mat, and we will tell it to only render out my body, my person segmentation. To do that, you need to understand the concept of alpha. So I always take this example that when you put a torch onto the wall, and if you put your fingers in the middle, you will see that the light only passes through your spaces between your fingers. And if you remove, and there's a shadow in the behind on the wall, because the light is not coming from that, so it creates a shape. Consider this hand as a alpha. Okay, so this alpha, I'm gonna, if I put this alpha in front of the light, the things which are visible on the wall, it will not have light where my alpha is. So consider that example, and take this person as that alpha, and that I'm going to project this person with my camera texture, and so that the person is visible, not my background. So we could do that, right? So we go to the alpha and give this texture to the segmentation texture. It is not very much visible right now because there's no difference. We have to take one more rectangle to make you understand that. And I'm gonna take this rectangle, make it super big, and also take a material out of it and call this material to as matte background. Right, make it flat as well. And right now this rectangle, this background is coming first, and then my user. So I'm gonna go it, make it away. All right. So if you notice that now my background is not visible to me, because it's white, and the user is me. This user is me. And if I go to the user mat, and if I uncheck this alpha, I can see my background again. But if I check this alpha, because it has a segmentation texture, I cannot see my background. So when I was telling you that example, that what if what if you want to see everything, the hand, only the hand but not the background? So then you can invert it, like this was my alpha, this was my personal segmentation, so I can't see myself and I can see everything in the back. And here it's just the opposite. Okay, so this is just the inversion. Okay. Our background material, we go to our background material. We don't want it super white. We want it to have like some texture, but which is like transparent, so that my background is not so bright, but my particles would be. So I'm gonna just create on the color, make it like super blue, and change the opacity. Opacity is like make it transparent to maybe like 70% or maybe like 60%, that whatever works for you. I'm already, I feel like I'm already in a different planet where with this everything is blue, right? um, okay, we're done. But if you notice, we can't see our particles right now. Our particles are not even visible. So now we fix that. We will fix that. First of all, we will create 3 layers where whatever is in the background will go to the background layer. Our background itself will go to the background layer. This will also go to the background layer. Our user not go to the background layer because user is in front of the background layer. So we'll create a new layer to it and we'll call it user layer, right? And then we want some more particles similar to this. Let's say not similar to this, in a different manner, but we'll come to that later. First, we'll show these particles. And I think if I have my user here, and then I'll take these 3 materials, and when you select the materials together, you can change some of the common properties at once. If you take them one by one, you can also do that. But if you select them all together, you can kind of do that for multiple properties, multiple materials, and the same properties. Um, Go to the render option, and then right now, what's happening? It's kind of aware of the depth in the scene, and we want to say that like, please don't care about the depth, just only show um, the layering order. Don't care about the depth because we are concerned about our layering here, and we don't care that if you see the depth in the scene. So if you already see that my particles are already in my background, if I go away, they're already in my background always. They're not in front of me, and I have them there. And I can create some particles in the foreground now. Okay, I'm gonna take a maybe 5 minutes break to digest this, so that you can digest this, and then maybe let me know in the chats what steps are you at. If there's something that you've not understood, I think there are you're getting help from people. uh, okay, now I can finally see your comments. I was not able to see the comments earlier. And then let me know in the chats where you at, are you following, and uh, yeah, go try it. I'm gonna take some of your questions. Meanwhile, this we're gonna wait for only for 5 minutes. I saw a question from about the drift velocity. Yep, you can add that. There's an option in the emitter where you can kind of create some drag and some drifts as well. So if you go to the acceleration, and there's a drag as well. So the drag can give you the drift kind of effect as well. Yes, Divyansh is asking about like, can you add a custom background? Yep, of course you can add a custom background. So instead of not having a texture here, maybe import a texture that whatever you wanna put. Let's say let's say uh, a room of an image of your own room. I can have it, and I can be like acting that I'm sitting in your room. Maybe I will try to have this this flower texture in the background. Why not? So this background can be this flower texture as well. So if you notice that the texture is there, but it's not appropriate right now for this. This is because it's a smaller in size and everything. So we'll have to adjust the ratio. Whatever these textures are, they are square format. If you see the 256 cross 256, the square format, and this is a rectangle that we're projecting at. So we need to make sure that we we do this conversion first. Yes, Bhuvana, please go ahead if you have a question. We still have a few minutes. Yep, that's possible to create an emitter. That's possible to create an emitter in the background, and you can move it using your head. All you need to do is that to create that sort of logic that when you move your head, the position vector is passed to the position of this here. So if you're moving in the x, then it will be moving with that and like that. Of course, you can make Thanos disintegration effect in Spark here. Of course, you can make everything, almost everything. The technology in Spark here is pretty advanced now. You can make unimaginable things. All you gotta do is try, learn consistently, and then you should be able to do it. Okay. How are we? Do we need more time, or do we should we go ahead? I think. All right, I'm gonna change the texture back from the flower to having a no texture at all, and then my blue background is soothing for me right now. All right, we have the the particles in the background. We also have our background sorted. We need to add some particles in the foreground in front of me right now. Okay, I'm gonna just so we are into the camera scene because whatever is coming in front of me need not to be in a world space. Okay, one important thing. So when I say important thing, you gotta like focus on that important thing. Okay, another important thing is that when when I put it out, this thing outside the device, that means I put it out in the world, and that is why this is called a world effect. Okay, if you put things out of the device hierarchy, then it is a world effect. It does not have to be a tracker or anything. It is a world effect because um, your emitters are not in the device hierarchy. Okay, so I'm going to create one more particle. Actually, we'll create two particles, but we'll start with one more particle system, and we're going to call it like foreground particle, and we'll have actually two of them, and they can have a similar property, but we'll say that one particle should go with like cover maybe this space, and one particle can go like in this direction, right? Because if yeah, but we can start with one right now. I can't see this particle because it is in the user layer, and then also coming first, I think. Oh, I can't see this particle because it is spawning at the position of the camera. I want this particle to be here, so I can shift it like this. It can be visible, but that's not the correct way to do it. We'll go to focal distance. Okay, so if I put something in the camera hierarchy, it's not going to be visible on the screen. It is because something. It's almost like here's a mixture of Hindi. There's a Deepak ke niche andhera hota hai. So if you put something just below the Deepak, you won't be able to see it, right? So we need to go into the focal distance. Focal distance is let's create a focal distance. Focal distance is like our eyes perceive things at a distance, so that the where our eyes are, and there's a focal distance where the everything is being projected into our retina. So let's create another particle system and call it foreground particle. This particle um, is in the focal distance, and it is in line with this has to be in a focal distance as well. Okay, so in line with this, and it needs to render before the canvas so that I can see it on the top of my layer. And I'm going to also give it a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer as foreground layer. Now these particles are in front of me. I'm going to play with it a little bit. So I want these particles to start from right there on the screen. Not really back or so much below like that. So I'm gonna just drag it down up to maybe like until here, and they're right now emitting like a point. Maybe I want like emitting like a line because I want to cover this space. Okay, and I can increase the length of this line to be like maybe 0.3 should be okay, like that. They can be